I will introduce myself. I'm Carlin Benson, Exhibitions Director at Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild. Thank you for joining us on our Instagram Live event today. The Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild provides a vibrant center for arts and crafts in the beautiful community of Woodstock, New York. We are also preserving the historic and natural environment of one of the earliest utopian arts colonies in America. We offer a combination of residency, educational, exhibition, and performance programs that encourage creative collaboration among a diverse array of artists, students, art professionals, and the public. You can access our programming virtually through weekly emails, our various social media outlets, and through our website, woodstockguild.org. Today, I'm speaking with artist and Byrdcliffe Exhibition Committee member, Osi Audu, in his studio near Woodstock, New York. There will be time for questions at the end, so please feel free to ask questions in the Instagram comment section. Osi Audu is a Nigerian-American artist whose work explores the dualism of the tangible and intangible in the mind-body experience. His drawings and paintings focus on the human head as a center of waking and dreaming consciousness of self. Audu's work is in a number of museum and corporate collections, including the Newark Museum, the National Museum of African Art, Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., the British Museum and the Wellcome Trust Collection in London, the Hood Museum of Art in Hanover, New Hampshire, Sony Classical New York, and Fidelity Corporation Art Collection in Boston, Massachusetts. Audu is the recipient of a number of awards, including the Pollock-Krasner Foundation grant. You can see more of his work on his website, osiaudu.com. Good morning and welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning, Karen, and good morning, Carlin, rather.
Yes, that's
right. Everyone who joined us, thank you so much for taking time to join the conversation, and I welcome you all to my studio.
Yeah, thanks so much. First, I'd like to start off by asking you how you're doing, and I know it's a strange time, and just how you're doing over the last few months.
Yeah, thankfully, I'm doing okay. My family and I are safe, staying well.
That's good.
And I'm very grateful for that. And my heart goes out to people who are, facing the worst of the situation. Both in the country as a whole and actually, in the worldwide. Well, intensely difficult times. So, yeah, my heart goes out to everyone. But thankfully, I am.
That's good news. I know recently you were interviewed on CBS News, and it was also kind of about current events that have been going on since over the summer. So I thought maybe you'd like to tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate event that's come to a head over the summer is, has actually raised a lot of questions. Why in this 21st century, in the year 2020, that we, the right to breathe is actually something people have to, thousands and thousands of people all over the world actually have to take to the streets to demonstrate, to, to protect that right. At the same time, the focus on that, Black Lives Matter movement has brought attention to the work of Black artists and Black businesses, at least in the US. And one of the effects or results of that focused attention was that interview by, CBS 2 News that interviewed me at the Scoto Gallery in New York, just basically putting attention on the works of Black artists. Yeah, it was fun to do, and I'm grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, it was great. Great to have the just a little bit, of attention to your work, and also to the gallery, to Scoto Gallery. So it was good. Great. So while we're on the subject, there's a work that I'd like to talk about that we had talked about earlier about the work called Breath.
Right.
And I'm going to pull up an image of it. And this is an earlier work, but it's very interesting. I'd like you to tell us more about it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I made this work titled Breath back in 1998. And it actually has, it's made in, pastel on paper with nails and yarn, yellow colored yarn, strung across the ends, the top ends of each of the nails. And in the center of the shape that resembles the mouth, there is an embedded speaker, loudspeaker there, and which has been, the surface of it has been painted yellow as well. But the thing with the breath is that I actually recorded my own breathing, just simply taking a breath, right? Taking in and, in breath, exhaling, on and off like that. And it plays back in a continuous loop because I recorded in a CD player. And so when viewers come close to the work, they would just hear me, hear me breathing in and out, just as simple as that.
Wow, it's a very powerful piece. Yeah.
And I just thought that with the current, political and even health situation, he suddenly took on a relevance. And because on one end, the right to breathe, just like I said before, is being challenged, and with the injustices that the grave injustices being experienced by Black people in particular, and the ability to actually breathe itself is under challenge by the current coronavirus crisis. So, yeah, it just took on a new relevance for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that piece. There's another work we'd like to talk about too. It's Talking Head, and this is the work, and this is in the collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington. And
Right.
if you could tell us a little bit about this work, that'd be great.
Okay. This actually marked the very first time I started to incorporate sound in my work. This also has is made in pastel. The black, matte black part of it is pastel. This light, the light sheen there is made of graphite. Again, there's wool or yarn, nails, and there is a loudspeaker in the shape that represents the mouth too. This work was actually conceived when back in 1995, I had gone to to Korea for the Biennale in 1995. I was invited to make 4 large-scale wall drawings, and one of the pieces, which is the sketch for it, is also in the collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art with this one. And in the center of this black shape, I had actually, rather than painting the shape of the hair, the shape of the eyes, the mouth, the nose, ears, and stuff like that, I decided to write these in, eyes, mouth, ears, nose. Interestingly, everyone that came to my temporary studio there, when they came, maybe because English is not, the common language there, and they seeing that, they just felt the need to recite those names. Everyone did, and almost like a litany, as if they are calling into being that head. And I thought that was interesting, that I would really like to incorporate that in a piece of work. And so the concept for the talking head started. So later in 1996, when I actually made this work, I started to look at all the phenomenal experiences that go on in the head, like starting with experiences that you perceive through the sensory organs. Like I started with the eyes, mouth, ears, nose, recording this in a tape recorder, and then went into reciting the more the subjective experiences too, like thinking, wishing, fearing, being ecstatic, and all this. And so that plays back also in a continuous loop through this. So if I may just talk a little bit about my concept, I look at what the self is. What is the self? What are these two aspects of it? The tangible, the intangible, and use my work to investigate or add, question these two aspects of the self. And the way I find that I approach this topic is to look at very simple, fundamental activities that one carries out, like seeing, for example, talking, breathing, whistling, simple, basic, human activities. That when these things are challenged, you know that you are in serious trouble. So that is the background behind that piece.
That's great. Thank you. I want to talk about, when you mentioned whistling, there are two pieces that are very interesting, have an interesting story about that. And it's also about sound and silence. And I'm going to share one of those. I'm also wondering if you can move over a little bit to be more in the screen, just
okay.
Like, yeah, that way, that's perfect. Yeah, or a little bit. Yeah, that's good. So let me just share this one. And I love the story about this.
Oh, yeah, this piece, Learning to Whistle, was conceived back in January of this year, actually. January, I had traveled to Geneva for an art event opening, of the Africana Foundation opening. And in the hotel room, on the day I was to return to New York, I just woke up in the hotel room. It was very, very, very quiet. And as I was gathering my thoughts, I just heard two sounds, one high pitched and one low, in a continuous loop, if I may say so. And I just wondered, how is this sound forming? Where is this coming from? My interest obviously is in consciousness, and I was also at the time looking at the neurocorrelates of conscious experiences and looking at the sound of consciousness. I've been looking into that because of a project I have in mind, which is now stalled because of the coronavirus issue. And so I thought, when I was really fascinated by this sound, so I grabbed my phone and opened the memo, voice memo, and tried to whistle the sound into it to capture it. You know how you get an idea, you get your sketchbook and you record it in drawing form. But in this case, I'm capturing that idea in a voice memo. So I whistled it. And it's a very simple, I don't know if it's a melody, but it just goes. And it just repeats itself like that. So I recorded it. I thought, okay, I'll find a way of putting this in one of my pieces very soon. And as I looked into it, then the shape of whistling I looked at, because my work is inspired by shapes I see in traditional African art as well. So there is this Songhai mask, which usually has a pouting mouth, as if engaged in whistling. I said, okay, well, so there is some contextual background here. I mean, the Songhai mask itself is used during initiation ceremony, Songhai, but my interest in it was just the form of it. And so I then decided to make the work and incorporates the sound of breathing, which can be heard through a speaker in the back of the work. And as I had researched this topic further, looking into, is there silence actually in the universe? Why the room was silent? Why did I hear this two-pitch sound? Then I remembered that John Cage actually had looked into the same question. And he composed this piece titled 4 minutes 33 seconds of silence, and which he had conceived back in 1947, 48. But interestingly, in 1951, he went to Harvard University he immersed himself in an anechoic chamber. An anechoic chamber is a room where the walls have been treated in such a way that they absorb sound. They don't throw it back as an echo. So it's anechoic in that sense. And the external walls too have been soundproofed. So he went in there pursuing silence, and he found, to his surprise, that he heard the same double-pitched sound. When I don't know whether I was disappointed or not, but when he mentioned this to the sound engineer then told him that the high-pitched sound is actually the sound of his nervous system, and the low-pitched sound was the sound of blood coursing through his veins. And I thought, oh, okay, so that made me understand a little bit more of my experience. And I thought, okay, so this is actually by me recording it, it was like recording a self-portrait of the sound my brain, if you like, or the physicality of my being, or whatever it is, actually makes. And so it deepened my understanding of my theme, which is self-portrait, which is, I had recorded as my breath, me breathing, in that sense, in the breath piece. And I'm actually making 2 more new pieces pursuing that breath subject matter.
Here's the other piece that's in that, the other learning to whistle. Right.
So this is the second of the learning to whistle, because the shape just looks like, obviously this is geometric abstraction, but there's something that alludes to the shape of the head in what I do. So if you imagine a little bit, you will see that the pointy part could look like, the mouth, protruding, as in whistling, and, a head.
That's great. That's great. I love that story. It's got so many levels. It's really interesting. While we're talking about sound in your work, and there's also, you have work that has movement in it as well. And I just like to talk about this piece, the one here that was in London.
The seeing mind. I explore these simple activities as in seeing. But my understanding, this piece actually came about as part of a project I had done, which was shown at the Science Museum in London for 5 months. Part of the exhibition titled "The Head On." In that exhibition, we were looking at what goes on in the head, and each artist, 8 of us, each was paired with a neurologist. And I had interviewed a professor at the University of London then, Professor Kennard, looking at what is perception, how does that happen? And obviously we looked at the optic nerve involvement in it, images reflecting upside down, channeled through neural impulses by optic nerves, the right crossing to the left, and so on and so forth. But the big question is what interprets these neural sparks into shapes, into sounds, into colors, and stuff like that. And he said this is the $64 million question. Nobody knows. Anyhow, so my interest, therefore, is that I was looking at the mind as that which actually sees. Now, the piece itself is a simple frame, as you saw. And there's a proximity sensor embedded in the corner of the ceiling and the wall, and with a mechanical eye. So when viewers come within 10 feet of the work, The mechanical eye, the proximity sensor would trigger the mechanical eye to open, and it stays open for about 3 seconds, and then shuts if there is no further movement detected by the sensor. And after, if there is movement, obviously it opens again. I mean, it was commissioned by Wellcome Trust, and they eventually bought it as well. So it was shown in London for about 15 years. It just came down last year, actually.
That's great. Yeah. I love how the audience can kind of participate as well. That's so wonderful. Well, thanks. I'm sure there might be some questions about that later. We're going to have time for questions. So I would like to talk about your drawings a little bit. Here's one. If you'd like to tell us about this series.
Right. Now, my drawings are, in very simple terms, they are about blackness. Blackness not as an absence of light, but as light that is imperceivable by the eyes. Because if you look at the full spectrum of the electromagnetic waves, the visible light segment is just a very tiny fraction of it. If you look from the infrared to ultraviolet rays. Everything else, like gamma rays, X-rays, and stuff like this, are not perceivable by the eye. So one tends to assume that those will be seen. They don't appear. So it's black. So my work, therefore, my drawings, all of my work actually, but my drawings in particular look at things that are unseeable and therefore unknowable. All these things, unseeable and unknowable, about the nature of being, about consciousness, about the nature of the universe. And I don't use light and shade in the work. They all refer to something of the head. You can see this one has some element of the profile, very geometricized, obviously. Profile of a face, and actually inspired by a jaguar head. We don't have the picture of that now. And I rely on linear perspective. Now, linear perspective takes the gaze away from the picture plane into the background. But one thing that occurred to me, which was pointed out by a critic for the Village Voice when he saw my exhibition at Scoto Gallery, and he saw these pieces and wrote about it. And he said that though the lines were going inwards on one hand, but look at it again, it looks like it's actually advancing forward towards the picture plane, towards the viewer. And then he wrote that, he wrote a few things, but some of the things that stood out to me was that he said my drawings are, space warping, shape shifting rather, he said. Shape shifting, space warping, geometric abstractions. And I thought, wow, I'll take that, I didn't realize that. But once you start to see it that way, then it just keeps going in, keeps going in and out.
Yeah, you see it going in and out at the same time. It's like a trick of the eye or something. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the shape is supposed to contain this intangible essence of self. So the containers, but you can feel that there's the protruding part as a stand-in, the features, perhaps the mouth, the nose, things like this. Obviously very abstract.
Yeah, it's great. Did you mention the Yoruba concept of the inner and outer head? I don't know if we've talked about that.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. The Yoruba see consciousness as the head. So the head is the word for consciousness itself, as well as for the physical head. They see two aspects to this: the outer head, which we can obviously all see, and the spiritual consciousness of self, which they call the inner head. So the inner head, if you imagine a circular format where you have geographical geographical ends to it. To the north, you will have the inner head, as describing what the components of consciousness is. To the north, you have the inner head. To the south, you have the outer head. Now, to the left, you have the spirit, and then to the right, you have the body. Now, in the center, you have the eternal head, something like this. Anyhow, so I've explored in my work, I've explored both the spirit, as in the breath, I've explored the inner head, I've explored the outer head, and I'm also exploring the body now, which I'll talk about possibly later. This concept of the outer and inner head, I also incorporated. I made a piece of work which is actually in the collection of the Newark Museum called The Outer and the Inner Head. I don't know if you have the image.
Oh, yes, I do.
Right, the diptych.
Yes.
Right. So the also exploring perception with this, perception, seeing, and in this case involving engaging the viewers to actually gaze at the center of the left panel for about 20 seconds. I mean, we may not have time to do it now. About 20 seconds, and then after 20 seconds, transfer gaze to the center of the drone panel on the right, and what they will see is the complementary colors of the colors on the left. They'll see them on the right, such as greeny, bluey, haze, light.
So interesting.
Yeah. So this is my way of referring to this intangible essence of self. I mean, if we look deeply into color, we will see that none of those colors are actually real. They are created, in the brain. Even the supposedly tangible color. But that's another.
Yes, yeah, we could be here for a long time. There's so much to talk about, and I guess we should start to wrap it up. But I'd like you to talk about your new work, which I like. The fact that you told me that your work is cheerful, like during the last few months, you've actually been trying to make work that's a little bit more uplifting, and you have one of those paintings behind you. So yeah.
This, if I may just move around, around, you can actually take a look at it. Now, this piece is titled "Happy Dance." Wow. Why would anyone be making happy? There's nothing happy right now going on, but eventually we will get over this, right? Coronavirus and hopefully the social-political situation will improve. But as a reaction to the doom and gloom that is prevalent right now, I just thought, okay, we all need a positive story. We all need something uplifting. So I decided to look at things that are happy, like standing and watching the sunrise. If you look at the shape inside the yellow shape there, within the frame that represents the head, it's like the yellow rays of the rising sun is reflected inside it. So it's like engaging with happy thoughts too at the same time. This piece was inspired by a traditional African piece, the Balega sculpture piece. Obviously, there's already a geometricized body there, and it is used in initiation. It's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it is used in initiation. But interestingly, in the initiation heart, this piece is hung upside down, the center of the initiation heart, with a proverb that says that the bat hangs its head upside down because of the bad word it had been told by the sun. So I thought, okay, I will reverse that.
Interesting.
Right side up, because if there's some sort of tragedy, for example, flags are usually hung upside down. So if it is hanging right side up, it implies everything is good, it's enjoyable. Right. So I hung right side up and interpreted the zigzag motion in the body as a dance motion. So this is titled Happy Dance, and it's just to bring something happy and light and positive into the environment.
It does feel happy. I mean, the colors and the shapes and the movement, Yeah, I feel like you definitely, you get that feeling from looking at it.
Okay.
And we all need a little bit of that right now. So that's great. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to see if we have any questions from our audience. If you have any questions, please type them into the comment section. We must have a few questions or comments. I love the relation to the African sculpture too. I mean, how you've abstracted it, but you can still see it clearly, you know, as a reference. But oh, Melinda says it's nice to see the scale. Yes, I know when I'm sharing these little images, you don't realize how large,
Yeah,
you know,
until
your work is big.
I'm close to it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you, so how, what are these, what's the medium on these? Are they're paintings, right?
Yeah,
They're acrylic?
acrylic on
Mm-hmm.
canvas. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the new breath pieces I'm working on. They are also, some of them are acrylic on canvas too, but with sound embedded, just like in the Learning to Whistle, but with a strange slight twist to it. I don't like describing in detail what it is until obviously I've finished it and I know that it works. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll all get to see this soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I have a good question here. Have you always worked abstractly, or did your work was your work perhaps figurative at another time, or how did you get to that point of abstraction?
Yeah, I actually started my art career as a realistic, painting realism, painting from direct observation, figurative works, actually drawing and painting from posed models. Because my art education in Nigeria, at the University of Ife, we painted a lot from the model, and I actually started my career as a portrait painter, making portraits, painting portrait commissions. I painted the president of Nigeria at some point.
Mm.
Um, and it was presented to him. I was asked to do this by the university I was teaching in at the time, University of Benin.
Mm.
And I painted the vice chancellor. I painted so many people. And
Mm.
there's reference to my early portrait painting, realistic, in realism on my website. Check early work to see images like that. So I've always been interested in the head, but this time I'm looking not just at the outer form, but interested in the intangible essence of self. So that's what has been engaging my attention for up until now, actually.
Wow. I just had a question come in about the heads. Someone asked if you, when you're making this work, are you thinking it as your head, or is it more of a universal human head?
Yeah, it's difficult to differentiate sometimes, but
Mm.
when I use the term self-portrait in my work, it's portraits of the intangible self. But also some of the self-portraits have included aspects of myself, like my breath, my voice, in a sort of disembodied form accompanying the work. But generally speaking, it's about the intangible essence of self.
Mm. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's great. I have another question that kind of is maybe relevant to that. Someone's asking about when you look at the work, there's so many ideas in there that are deep and like, you know, even science based. And the person's kind of asking how do you see the viewer kind of getting that information out of the painting, you know, when something is, you know, basically a geometric abstract painting, but you know, how is this communicated, I guess, is what the person's asking. I mean, a lot of work is like that, where there's so much to it. You kind of have to read up on the artist, or, you know, maybe there's some kind of accompanying text about it. But I don't know. But how do you feel that all these ideas, how do you feel that this is projected, like through your paintings
Right. I think
and drawings?
thank you. The concepts do two things in my view. They inform the production of work,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they can also broaden I hesitate to use the word deepen, but they can broaden the appreciation of the work. But the work itself is a complete entity by itself. It's because this is visual, sometimes accompanied by auditory experiences too, visual art. So I would rather the people engage with the work visually, because this is something I used to say about my color work, that celebrate color and the power of color to excite and take us to places in our being that are full of energy. So there's that visceral, direct, immediate response and reaction to works of art, and that is perfectly valid, because in the end it's a visual communication. But concept forms too. The concepts they have the power to move. So if whenever I have the chance to listen to an artist talk about their works or the critical, I think it helps to deepen the experience of the work, or broaden it, I think.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I mean, once you release your artwork out into the world, it's up to the viewer is going to come to it with their own, exactly. Background. But yeah, so it can kind of exist in both ways.
Right, I appreciate when that happens too, because what R.C. Baker, the critic of the Village Voice, pointed out to me, writing, I really appreciated that, because it even
that's interesting. So it goes both ways sometimes.
My eyes to, it's a two-way street.
Right. Yeah, I love that. That's great. I have a couple more questions. One of them was about your use of negative space, that the use of negative space in this work is almost as important as the actual objects you're, painting, right. The forms. And this question was about kind of your process and the use of composition as far as like laying these out, because there is a lot of negative space, but it is really strong composition.
Oh, thank you. What I've used forever is this format where the positive space is mainly the form, and I don't like anything in the negative space at all, because then I don't want to impose a specific background detail to each work. That way, the work can be shown on any background. I like it to exist in its own virtual space, each form. So and it gives me the opportunity to actually focus mainly on the shape, because by the time you put a line here as the line of horizon or something, then you are dealing with two different energies altogether, and it can distort or distract, or I don't want to not right. That the works with backgrounds and stuff like this are not good, but for me, the way I just conceive my work, I think it's I prefer to not have anything in the background competing with the actual image, referred to as a positive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And another question, we probably only have time for one more question. This last question is, can you speak a little bit about the use of abstraction in traditional societies?
Yeah, the African arts is essentially abstract, because its focus has always been on the intangible aspect of being. Essentially abstract, because if you look at much of traditional African work, very, very abstract. But when dealing with portraying people who were living at the time that the artist made those pieces, like they would be very, very realistically made. For example, the Ife heads, they are very, very, very realistically accomplished. But generally, it's all abstract, because so that tradition of abstraction is somehow in my blood somehow, because abstraction is the best way I find to engage with that which is intangible, to engage with things you don't see, but you feel, or you even can go close to by philosophical thinking. So my work, which is generally metaphysical in its focus, and abstraction lends itself very readily to engaging with those thoughts about what is the self, what is the origin of the self. Right.
It's a great answer. I mean, so true. There's things you just need to portray in an abstract way, because the thoughts would be impossible to illustrate in any other way. Yeah, so thank you. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Lots of nice comments coming in. It was just so wonderful to talk to you, and thanks so much for sharing your work. Is there anything else you want to say before we leave?
Yeah, just to take this opportunity to thank everybody who came out to listen, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of a series of Instagram event interviews. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and welcome you to my studio, and and hopefully we'll run into one or two of you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thanks. It was just so great. I learned a lot too. I think a lot of people, we all have a lot to think about now. It's really great. Yeah. Thank you. I'd just like to conclude by thanking everyone. And if you enjoyed our Instagram Live interviews over the past few months, please consider making a donation to Woodstock Byrdcliffe Guild. We are committed to continuing to provide access to the arts during this difficult time. You can visit us on Instagram, Facebook at woodstockguild.org for the latest information about upcoming events. Our website also features items from the Byrdcliffe shop and information about becoming a member. So thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye. Thanks. Take care.
Take care.